Good morning. It's day X of learning Sui by building random stuff, and today I just felt like I would build this little proof of concept, this equip your character kind of simulator, so that I can get a feel of how to actually use Sui and to integrate it with the front end code like JavaScript and stuff. So just to show you how it works, first you connect your wallet, and then you create your character and items, which is just minted on chain. So right now it's just testnet. So mints a bunch of mints the character and then the items that you can equip to the characters. And then from here you can select the characters, the items you want to equip on, and then you can just save it. And then it saves it on chain rather than a database, because if you do things on chain, it's just a cool way of doing things right now. And so yeah, that's how it works right now, and it's really simple, just one page, just to get a feel of how to use Sui, how to integrate it in a front end framework. And so just to show you how that works in the code and what we're working with. So I guess the three main things are, there is the on-chain contract code, and then there's the front-end JavaScript code. One part is just the functions that call the on-chain code, and the second part is the I guess you can say the UI code, the thing that syncs the data from on-chain to the UI. So it starts from the on-chain contract. So I guess if you're familiar with more like Web 2 sites and Web 2 apps, traditionally you have like a front end using JavaScript framework, and then you have a back end, which is like your API. You can use the front end code to talk to the API, and then the API hits the database and gets the chain on the data from there, and then it parses it, maps it, returns it to the UI, and then chops it up and presents your UI. In this case, it's a very simplified approach, but it's just your front end code and it's the on-chain contract. So it's really, there's no database, there's no server, it's just a bundle of JS and your contract on chain. And this is the code that's deployed on chain. So it's Sui Move. It uses the language Sui Move, and the thing about Sui Move is it's instead of using accounts like Ethereum or EVM based chains or Solana, everything is an object, which makes things like it makes dealing with digital assets a lot easier, because it's like it's supported as, it's like a first class citizen. It's like the same way modern front end frameworks like React and Svelte have first class support for components. Sui has first class supports for digital assets through objects. So objects represent your thing. I mean, your digital asset, your whatever you want to say. So the two main ones in here are the item and the character. The character, as an object, as a Sui object, it has key, so it has its own ID that makes it that you can specify, that you can identify it from any other object. And then from here, these are just a bunch of fields that you can specify on the character. For here, it's just an option of items. So it can, for the option, you can specify as empty, or you can specify as an item, which is just another object, has a type, has slot, has some stats. And so with this option, it makes it very easy to equip the item and then to unequip it, and we'll get into that a bit later too. So we have the two items, then we have an event too. I'll get into that a bit later. And then you have item stats, which just for organization, it's just easier to, I don't know, I just wanted to play with it. And so we have functions that you can use to manipulate, to act on these objects. So first you have create character, basically just creates a character, returns the character to the sender, or whatever you want to do with it. Then you have create starter items, creates 9, it's just hard-coded items that you can create. And then it emits an event after every item created. And then you have your delete character and delete items and equip character. Equip character, it's kind of broken right now, but it does work on the first try. So basically the logic here is just you unequip all the slots, all the items from all the slots of the character, and then from the items that you send in, you equip them. You fill in the slot. So yeah, that's the on-chain code. And the next part would be the front end code, the JavaScript functions that integrate with the on-chain code. So that is the contract, and that is the thing. So I generally keep all my contract, I don't know what to call these, I guess contract tools. Yeah. So contract tools, it makes use of the SDK And basically, it's pretty simple. It's like you just create a transaction. Transaction is imported from the SDK. And then from the transaction, you can just specify the contract that you want to, specify the objects that you want to, you specify the package, and then within the package, you specify the module, and then you specify the function that you want to call, and then you pass in your arguments. So here, I have them as constants. So the first one is create character. It's just literally package ID, because the package itself, it lives on the sweet chain as an object itself, and because it's an object, it has its own ID, just like this. So you can specify it by specifying the package ID, object ID, or just package ID, and then the module inside the package ID, and then the function within the module within the package ID. And that's how you call the contracts function. And then the arguments, because there's no arguments, if we go back, you can say create character. It just has the one context, but this is automatically passed in, so you don't have to explicitly specify it. So back to the contract. So the first call is to create character, and the second call is to create starter items. And then after that, once they are created, you transfer the object back to the sender, and then you transfer the objects of the items that are returned back to the sender as well. So that's basically our little transaction. So then we sign it, we execute it, and this is what comes back. And so I think we can see this right now in the console log. So execute a transaction right here. So if you're more used to the Web 2 model, you generally, when you fetch from the database, you just get everything that the API sends. So like if it's a REST API point, you just get a bunch of JSON data, or however you specify it. If you get a GraphQL, it's in the shape that you want. But with SWE, you get the transaction. I'm not sure what you call this. I guess executed transaction. So it's not quite the same. You get kind of like a description of all the changes that happened, which can be useful, but it's not as forward. It's not as direct. So for example, for these object changes, you have the object ID, but you don't really have the object. So usually you'd actually have to refetch the objects to get the most up-to-date, which is why I use events in this case. So the events, it can specify exactly what item was created and the stats, so I can sync them back to the UI state. And so these are the events right here. So it shows the ID, and then within the parse JSON, that's where all the data of the object is. If you don't do this, without events, I'm not sure how else you do this without actually refetching the data on chain. And personally, I think it's kind of wasteful. If you can do it in one trip, just do it in one trip. And then from there, you can sync it to your UI state. So going back to our contract tools, you have that. And then I just like to map it from the transaction response on chain to some data that I can actually use. So this is just more readable data. And then what calls this function is the UI code. And since it's Sveltekit, I usually just like to store all my data in one class with runes instead of if you use React, you may use something like Redux or some kind of third-party store. But with Svelte, it's very minimal. You can just use native JavaScript things, and it works out for the most part. So mint character, you got this game store. So this is where I keep my stuff. Game store, game state. It's just one class with everything. It keeps track of the UI state and syncs it up. And then it also has a bunch of getters, and it has a bunch of functions, methods that actually call the contract. So I just like to have that as keeps things nicely and tidy, separated. So you have the on-chain code, you have the contract code that interacts with the on-chain code, and then you have the game state or store that calls the contract tools, that calls the on-chain code, returns the data, parses it, and then it syncs it back to the UI so you can actually render UI and do all the kind of stuff you want to do on the front end. So yeah, you mint character and items, and then you get the result, and then you just kind of feed it into these other methods that update the state of the game state, and then from game state you can actually use it anywhere. For example, empty character component right here. this was the first screen, and then handle mint character. Actually, what is this page right here? Anyways, yeah, most of this front end was vibe coded anyway, so if you're interested, you can always, it's going to be open source. You can look through all the code. And yeah, this was a pretty fun setup, just kind of relearning Sui, because it's been like a year since I've touched this code, any Sui code. And yeah, it was very frustrating to, in some ways it was like very, very fun, because like writing Sui move is so simple in many ways, but at the same time it's not, it's also very restrictive, because it's not like I'm used to JavaScript and like loose types, all that stuff. It's just anything goes. But with Sui, it's based off Rust, as I understand it, and it's like very type safe. And so I couldn't get this equip character function to work it properly, because I don't know. I just didn't want to play with it anymore. So like you see, the first time it worked with the equip, and then it loads the data from on chain, and then it works fine. And I guess we should check out the thing right here too. So if we check out the character, it has the object ID right here, and we go for testnet. Check out the character, and we can see the object is here, and it has a bunch of fields. And within the fields, some of them are equipped, some of them are not. So the right arm should be unequipped, and everything else should be equipped. And you can see, let's say armor, it's equipped with the armor item object, and it also has all the object fields of that item. If we go back to item, you see it has ID, type, slot, stats, attack, defense, health, and that's basically what we have here. And then for right arm, it has null because it's not filled in. So yeah, that is that. But then unequipping doesn't work right now, because yeah, I just couldn't figure that out, and I was getting tired of it. So when I try to unequip it, just yeah, it gives this problem, but everything else should work fine. And yeah, that's just my little example of how to equip your character with Sui integrated with Sveltekit. Hope you like it, and if you want to read the code, just check the link in below.